You want to talk about seduction? Okay, so we are diving deep into Robert Greene's The Art of Seduction.
Oh, yeah.
It's a deep dive into the history and the psychology behind this. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Slightly intimidating art.
Yeah.
We've got excerpts from the book.
Right.
We've got, alongside some juicy historical accounts of famous seducers.
I love it. Buckle up.
So what I think is so fascinating about Greene's approach is that it's not just about giving you like a set of techniques, right? It's not just like, oh, here are the 5 things you can do to be more seductive.
Right.
He really goes deep into the psychology of it.
Okay.
He dives into these seductive character types, and he actually argues that seduction begins with who you are.
Okay.
The aura that you project.
I like that. Long before any tactic even comes into play.
It's like he's saying, forget pickup lines. You need a whole seductive persona.
Exactly. Exactly. You need to cultivate that. And he lays out all these different types, right? You've got the siren, the rake.
Oh, yeah. The ideal lover, the dandy.
Yeah, all these archetypes.
Yeah.
And each one has a unique allure, a unique kind of energy.
So it's not just one size fits all.
No, not at all. Greene emphasizes the power of embodying a specific quality that draws people in.
Okay.
And it's not always about conventional attractiveness either.
Okay.
It's more about embodying a certain fantasy.
Okay.
And I think a great example of this is Cleopatra. Right?
Oh, yeah. A classic siren.
A classic siren.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just her beauty.
Right.
She cultivated this aura of exoticism and grandeur. So imagine, right? You're Caesar. You're Mark Antony.
Yeah.
And you encounter this woman who makes you feel like you've stepped into a heightened reality.
Right.
That's seductive power.
It's like she understood the assignment.
She understood the assignment. She embodied that fantasy.
Yes.
To a T.
Okay, but hold on, because it's not all about, like, being a heartbreaker, right?
Right.
He throws in this curveball, anti-seducers.
Yes.
The people who repel us without even realizing it.
Yes.
Which makes me think, like, ooh, do I have a little anti-seducer in me?
Well, we all have a little bit of anti-seducer in us, right? I mean, it's just human nature.
Right.
But I think it's a great reminder to be self-aware.
Okay.
To think about how we're coming across to other people. And Greene, he really nails down the anti-seducer's kind of downfall as this potent cocktail of self-absorption and a total blind spot to other people's feelings. They just don't get it.
So lesson 1, don't be that person at the party.
Right.
That only talks about their stamp collection.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Don't be that person.
Okay. But let's get back to the masters of the game here.
Okay.
Greene gets into some pretty intense tactics.
Yes.
Strategic weakness,
Mm-hmm.
creating illusions,
Okay.
even a touch of pain.
Ooh.
Wait, hold on. Pain.
Now, this is where it gets interesting, right?
Okay.
Because we often think of seduction as being all about, being charming and flattering.
Mm-hmm.
But Greene suggests that sometimes a little bit of vulnerability can be incredibly disarming. Because when you appear vulnerable, it actually appeals to the other person's desire to protect, to feel powerful.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So you're making them feel needed, which, let's be honest, is a very powerful feeling.
So it's like playing on someone's ego a little bit.
A little bit, making them feel like they're the strong one in the dynamic.
Right. Okay.
Right. And then there's this idea that a little pain can actually heighten desire. And Greene actually uses this analogy of a controlled burn in forestry.
Okay.
Have you ever heard that?
Yeah.
Where they'll actually, sometimes you need to do a controlled burn
Right.
to clear out the underbrush.
Right.
And then it allows for new growth.
Oh, okay. Okay. So you're saying like a little strategic distance, maybe even a well-timed disagreement or something like that.
Yes.
Could actually make the reunion that much sweeter.
In essence, yes. Because it's about contrast.
Yeah.
Right. The lows make the highs feel even higher. But it's definitely a delicate dance.
Right, because too much, you'll push them away for good.
Exactly.
Right.
Too much, and you've gone too far.
Yeah, this is starting to feel like a high-stakes game of emotional chess.
It is. It is. But, remember, Greene is exploring the full spectrum of seduction here.
Right.
He's drawing on history, he's drawing on literature, he's drawing on psychology.
Right.
It's like a masterclass in the art of influence.
Oh, okay.
And, with examples from Cleopatra to Casanova, he's got
a wide range.
A wide range.
Oh, yeah.
He's covering it all.
Okay, we're back, and we're getting deeper into Robert Greene's The Art of Seduction. We were just talking about strategic weakness.
Yep.
But then Greene throws out isolation as a tactic.
Yes.
And I gotta be honest, that one made me a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's definitely a tactic that needs to be handled with caution, right?
Right.
Greene's point is that when someone's isolated, they're more susceptible to influence the idea,
Okay.
right? Think about it.
Yeah.
Separate someone from their usual support system, their friends, their family,
Right.
and they naturally become more reliant on whoever's left.
Yeah, so you're basically creating this vacuum.
Yes.
And then, boom,
Exactly.
you step in with your seductive influence.
You're catching on.
Okay.
It's like transplanting a flower, right?
Okay.
Take it out of its familiar soil, and it's going to be much more dependent on you for nourishment.
Okay.
Greene gives some pretty striking historical examples of this, but it's important to remember that, a little isolation can be unintentional, even circumstantial.
Right.
But when it's deliberate,
Right.
wow, that's when things get a little murky.
Yeah, I can see how that can very easily cross the line. Okay, let's talk about another tactic Greene describes affecting a regression. He talks about taking someone back to their childhood, psychologically speaking, of course.
Right.
How does that work in the game of seduction?
So this one's all about tapping into our primal needs. Think about it. What are our most basic needs as children? Comfort, security,
Right.
a sense of being taken care of.
Being taken care of, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So by positioning yourself as a protector,
Right.
maybe even subtly adopting a parental role, you can evoke these incredibly deep feelings of attachment.
Yeah, it's like you're creating the safe space where they can let their guard down, be
Yeah.
vulnerable.
And then, bam,
Now,
you strike.
it's not always about striking, per se.
Okay.
But you are creating a very powerful dynamic, that's for sure. And Greene argues that these early experiences, especially with our caregivers, they really shape our adult attachments in ways that we often don't even realize.
It's pretty intense. It's like he's giving us this psychological X-ray vision
Yes.
into how our past experiences can influence our present relationships.
Exactly.
Wow.
And once you understand those patterns, right, you can start to see how they play out in your own life.
Yeah.
And maybe even, dare I say, use them to your advantage.
Okay, enough with the heavy psychology.
Yeah.
Let's lighten the mood a bit. Greene also talks about spiritual lures as a seduction tactic,
Right.
which seems like a complete 180 from playing the parent role. Right. This is about appealing to a person's higher self. They're yearning for meaning and connection beyond the purely physical.
Okay.
Right. Think about it, everyone. Deep down has insecurities, doubts, a desire to be seen as more than just a physical being.
Right. So instead of a teddy bear and a warm hug,
Right.
you're offering them, a philosophical debate and a trip to an art museum.
Well, you could put it that way.
Okay.
But the point is, you're shifting the dynamic from the purely physical to something deeper, more meaningful.
Right.
You're saying, I see you. I see your soul.
Right.
And that can be incredibly seductive.
Yeah, it's like you're playing a whole different game, operating on a higher level.
Exactly.
Yeah. I can see how that would be really appealing to someone who's, tired of the same old superficial interactions.
Precisely. It's about creating a sense of transcendence, of shared values and aspirations.
Right.
You're building a connection that goes beyond the physical.
Wow.
And that can be incredibly powerful.
This is blowing my mind. I'm starting to think Greene's not just talking about seduction in the romantic sense,
Right.
but about how we influence each other.
Yes.
In all aspects of life.
You're absolutely right.
Wow.
These principles apply to business, friendships, even family dynamics.
Yeah.
It's all about understanding what motivates people, what makes them tick.
We've covered so much ground already, from seductive archetypes to all these psychological tactics Greene talks about.
Right.
I'm really curious to hear more about the examples he gives in the book.
Yeah.
He analyzes a ton of historical figures.
Right. He does. He does. From Cleopatra to Casanova.
Right.
He really runs the gamut.
And the section about stars as seducers,
Yeah.
that really caught my eye. It made me think of icons, like Marilyn Monroe, Marlene Dietrich.
Yeah.
These larger-than-life figures who just, commanded attention.
What Greene finds so fascinating about these stars is this mastery of illusion.
Okay.
He argues that they create this aura of the unreal.
Right.
This captivating blend of the real and the imagined. Think about Marilyn's iconic walk.
Right.
Or Dietrich's androgynous allure.
Right.
They weren't just beautiful, they were captivating enigmas. They understood the power of mystique.
It's they were always just slightly out of reach, which made people crave them even more.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They understood that fascination is often born from a certain degree of distance.
Right.
It's that age-old allure of the unattainable.
Totally.
And Greene actually quotes a French poet, Montesquieu, who said, "The best means of preserving love is to love moderately. That of preserving respect is to keep at a distance."
There's so much wisdom in that.
Isn't there?
Yeah, it reminds me of that saying, familiarity breeds contempt.
Yes.
Like if you're always right there, always available,
Right.
you become too familiar, too predictable.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's the opposite of seductive.
Right.
The stars understood that they needed to maintain a certain mystique, a sense of mystery,
Right.
in order to keep people intrigued.
And speaking of keeping people intrigued, Greene also talks about, this idea of mixing pleasure with pain as a tactic. I'm not going to lie, that one made me a little nervous. Isn't that getting a little too close to, like, straight up manipulation?
It's definitely a tactic that walks a very fine line.
Okay.
What Greene is getting at is this idea that, too much predictability, too much niceness can actually become, well, kind of boring.
Okay.
He gives the example of King Louis XIV, who was a master of this.
Oh, okay.
He used this strategic blend of, like, aloofness and then these, like, grand gestures to keep his courtiers constantly vying for his attention.
So it's that classic, like, push and pull dynamic.
Yes.
Give a little, take a little, keep them guessing.
Exactly. Exactly. It's about disrupting expectations.
Right.
A little bit of calculated distance, maybe even a touch of, playful cruelty can actually heighten the impact of any subsequent kindness or attention.
Right. It's like that saying, absence makes the heart grow fonder.
Yes. Exactly.
But, I mean, it takes a skilled hand to pull that off.
Absolutely. Too much pain, and you just push the person away completely.
Of course.
It's about finding that sweet spot, that delicate balance.
Right.
Between keeping them intrigued and pushing them away.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. So we're wrapping up our deep dive into the art of seduction. What would you say are the biggest takeaways for our listeners?
Yeah, I think Greene's book, it's not just a how-to manual for seduction.
Right.
It's this fascinating exploration of the psychology of desire.
Okay.
It reminds us that we're all hardwired to crave connection, to be seen, to be desired. And while some of the tactics that Greene describes, they can certainly be used for manipulative purposes.
Right.
They can also be used to just deepen our understanding of ourselves and our relationships.
It's like he's giving us this, like, secret decoder ring for understanding human behavior.
Yes.
We can start to see these dynamics at play everywhere, from our romantic relationships to our professional lives.
Absolutely. And that awareness is incredibly empowering, right? Because it allows us to make more conscious choices about how we interact with others and how we allow ourselves to be influenced.
So our final thought for you, dear listener. Greene argues that everyone has a seductive side. What's yours? What are you naturally drawn to? What makes you feel seen and desired? Until next time, keep exploring.